Okay, in this video, I'm going to demonstrate different techniques that you can use to show what's called atmospheric perspective. This is also known as 0-point perspective because unlike 1-point, 2-point, or 3-point where we're using lines and vanishing points, these are really just using different strategies or other techniques to show and create this feeling of depth on your paper. So using these various strategies of overlap, paper placement, size and detail reduction, value reduction, line weight, and line thickness, we'll be able to give the illusion of a three-dimensional space on this flat piece of paper. So let's start with one of the most basic, using this idea of overlap to show that some things are further away than others. So if I start by drawing, I'm going to draw a very simple house. And I want to show maybe there's a tree in the backyard. Maybe that tree is being blocked by the house. Okay, like I said, these are very basic drawings. I know that that tree is further away than the house because it's being covered up here in the corner. So by putting one object further back and overlapping it with an object in the front, we can create a very basic sense of depth. If I wanted to maybe represent a few other houses, maybe this is a little street in a neighborhood, I can start to do two things. Place things higher up on the paper to show that they're further away, so that would be paper placement. And as I do that, as I move things higher up on the page, I'm going to start to reduce their size. So the second and third house I draw are going to be smaller than the first. This doesn't mean that the houses are actually a smaller size or drawn in miniature, but it just appears that when things are further away, they appear to be smaller. So now it looks like these three houses are further away. This one's much further away than this one's further away than this one, because they get smaller and they're moving up on the page. As I draw them, I can also change the line weight and the line thickness. So I'm using a 6B pencil right now. To help this house feel closer, I could use thicker lines drawn with a darker pencil. So I'm just going to go over some of my lines quickly. My middle house, I'll use a 2B pencil and make them more medium lines. And I'll leave this back one the way it is. I still used a dark pencil just so you could see it on camera, but on your drawing you might want to switch for those background details to an HB or even a 2H pencil. That variation in line thickness, thick in the front, thin in the back, and line weight using darker pencils like the 6B in the front, maybe a 2B in the midground, and a HB or even a 2H in the background also helps. If I were shading these in, I would also want to reduce the value. So the objects in the front could be much darker. As they go back, they're going to start slowly losing intensity and being lighter values. And I'll show you a picture of what I mean by that after.
Ms. Reed, please report to room 130.
Sorry for the interruption. The last one that we haven't done yet is detail reduction. So if I wanted to look at my house in the foreground, I could start to add pretty accurate details. Maybe the door has a window on it. Maybe there are a few windows along the front of the house. Maybe I'm close enough that I can see the grids in the windows or other details. As I move back, maybe I just see the door and just see windows. Maybe the house in the very back, I can only make out basic details. So as things move further away, they're going to be less and less detailed. That will also help to create this feeling of depth. I could go on to add other details if I wanted to. Maybe there's a bush in the front of this house. Again, I'm using overlap here. I'm overlapping the bush with the front of the house to show that it's in front of the house, not behind the house. Maybe I wanted to draw some other grasses or flowers or things like that by the house. As I move further back, I can switch to a different pencil, making things a little smaller. As I move even further back, I'm going to switch now to my HB pencil. Very subtle details. Okay, so all of these strategies used in conjunction with each other are all helping to show depth. They're giving the feeling that these objects are closer to me than the ones in the back. So you can see how effective these atmospheric perspective techniques are. In your final summative drawing, you're going to be using these strategies in conjunction with the typical linear perspective strategies that we're going to study as well. So the combination will really accentuate that feeling of depth in your final pictures. For your formative exercise, I want to see that you can replicate at least 4 of these strategies in the box on your worksheet that looks like this. Please don't copy my drawing exactly. Make it personal, make it original, make it your own. You don't need to even do things as elaborate as my drawings. Just basic shapes would be fine. Putting this all together, if we look at a photo like this, we can see all of these different strategies at play. So this dog, we know, is much closer to us because he's lower down on the page. We know the dog is much smaller than these buildings, but because he's closer to us, he's represented much larger. I can make out all the details of his fur and his face, and the values are nice and dark and crisp and sharp. As we move further away, I can still make out some details. I can tell that these are trees and bushes, but I can't see as much detail as I can with the dog. As I move even further away into the background, you can see how hazy and blurry everything is becoming. That's that value reduction that we were talking about, and that kind of size and detail reduction. Everything is getting much smaller and harder to make out because it's further away from me. That idea of overlap as well, right? What is closest to us is in front of the things that are further away. I can represent this in real life too. So if I pan the camera up to give you a view of the classroom, you can see I've placed some supply boxes on the tables. The one that's closest to us with the crayons, we can make out the label. As we look further away, the orange tag says scissors. It might be a little bit more difficult to read. And certainly those things are more clear than the supply boxes that are left way on the back supply shelf. You can see all these boxes and white bins are the same size, but the one with the crayons that's closer to me is much larger. As they get further away, they're also much lower down on the picture plane, and they move up as things move away. So these are things that are represented in real life as well. And if you know how to take advantage of them, you'll be able to create a much more realistic drawing using these different techniques of atmospheric perspective. Good luck on your drawings.